There are probably a lot of you in the Crocodile Army that are tired of hearing about the Trayvon Martin case. I don't necessarily blame you, but I beg your indulgence on this, since I was traveling for work and for pleasure in quick succession, as often happens with my schedule, and I didn't have a chance to make a video about the verdict until now. I normally let this type of news story just fade away when I'm late to the conversation, but I have thoughts that I need to express before I let the whole ugly incident become just another footnote in the list of events that happened in my lifetime. I get to do that, you see, because there's almost no chance that I would ever be in a situation like that on either side of the gun. I'm lucky to have that luxury. Not everyone does. Most of you know the details of the case, but I'll summarize the part of it that isn't in dispute, just so you understand my perspective more clearly. A black 17-year-old named Trayvon Martin went out for some snacks and walked back to the apartment where he was staying. A neighborhood watch volunteer named George Zimmerman, who is not black and lived in the same apartment complex, followed him. Based on the 911 recording, Zimmerman clearly thought Trayvon was up to no good and didn't belong there, despite having no good reason to believe that. If I had been walking through that apartment complex, I guarantee he wouldn't have followed me anywhere. We may never know what happened for sure after that, but we do know that there was a struggle, Trayvon was shot dead, and Zimmerman claimed that he was attacked and feared for his life, therefore making the shooting a case of self-defense. After a brief initial investigation, police released George Zimmerman. To figure out if we're all equal or not yet, consider the identical scenario, but with different participants. How brief would the initial investigation be if Trayvon's father had killed a popular white honor student? Yes, no matter how hard we try, when there's a murder, we make an assessment about the current and possible future value to society of the murdered person. People will naturally make a much bigger deal out of it if the person is famous. If the victim of the murder is of low socioeconomic status, as the victims of a lot of inner-city murders are, then the public doesn't much care about it unless the body count becomes very high in a short time span. This similarly translates to not much outcry outside the affected neighborhoods to catch the murderers. This is of course why the Zimmerman defense team released the pictures of Trayvon smoking pot and trying to look tough. Because if they could reduce his value to society in the eyes of potential jurors, their client would be more likely to be found not guilty. It was a tactically smart but very callous move on their part, and that along with the significantly delayed investigation by police and the death of the only other person in the world who knew what happened, resulted in Zimmerman's acquittal. So what part does the media play in all this? I'm not sure how my conservative Facebook friends are so certain that Trayvon deserved to die, but many of them are. Right after the verdict, my newsfeed was swarmed with posts about how there have been hundreds of black people murdered in Chicago since Trayvon was murdered, demanding to know why the liberal media didn't cover them the same way. If you see these posts on your own newsfeed, feel free to post this video so that I can personally tell them that they're failing to understand the basic concept of being able to find similar events for the purposes of comparison. Almost none of those murders in Chicago had a shooter claiming self-defense, and certainly none where the victim was also an unarmed kid and the shooter walked away free. Then there's the one about the black man who murdered the white teenager, which had nothing to do with self-defense, that was supposedly ignored by the media. Even worse, some people posted about the black teen that killed a 13-month-old baby, saying that Obama as a kid could have looked like him just as easily as Trayvon, as Obama had said. It's easy to read that subtext, isn't it? Don't forget, young black men are still really dangerous. Yes, that's right, nothing says that the United States is post-racial like blaming the media for inciting racism for reporting an unquestionably controversial murder, and then thinking of completely unrelated murders with the black man as the murderer instead as somehow appropriate counterpoints. So finally, after all this energy that was collectively expended worldwide arguing about the merits of this case, where does it all leave us? I'm personally not at all sure where it leaves us. Certainly we're no better as a society than before. If I were a young black man, I wouldn't walk anywhere by myself at night. Maybe that thought alone will save a few people, but it certainly isn't going to reduce the number of people who believe that deep down maybe Trayvon wasn't such a great loss, and maybe we should just leave it alone for the sake of the illusion of having achieved a colorblind society. And I think we all know how fiercely people can guard their illusions.